This is a general meeting. Yeah. Okay, that. This is a general meeting which is open to the public. I suspect our audience could include some people who contact legislatures frequently and some who rarely do. To optimize everyone's bandwidth, please mute yourself if you're not about to talk. And I think just about everyone knows that protocol as I look around. Tonight, we're welcoming Representative Evan Jenne, who's served in the Florida House of Representatives for 12 years, and he's agreed to answer our questions on how to be a good advocate. For the last 2 years, he's been Minority Leader. He also served as the House Democratic Policy Chair for 2 terms. I have a number of prepared questions, and I encourage anyone who has other questions to put them in the chat, which is located at the bottom of your screen. And Denise will figure out when to add them in for us so that we make sure we get to them. So Representative Jenne, thanks for coming. And we really do look forward to hearing your perspectives on advocacy and the tips to help each of us voice our opinions effectively.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. And I think the topic at hand being advocacy is extremely important because we're kind of entering into a new age in a lot of ways when it comes to how people advocate for their points of view. And some things work really well, some things don't work as well. But I think a key thing to always remember as we go through this, these are my opinions, and legislators are like any other group of people. You're going to find wonderfully open-minded people who you may think have a natural opposition to your point of view that are willing to listen and you know, can be tempered in some way. And you know, you're going to have people that are just belligerent at times. You know, it doesn't matter the group of people that you collect. If you put 120 people in one room and 40 in another, there's a lot of different personalities and a lot of different ways to navigate. I always described it as a 2-level 160-piece chess match where every single piece on the board can make their own moves if they choose to do so. So advocacy in the legislature can be very complicated, and I look forward to getting into all of that with you tonight.
Great. Maybe I should start by asking you for your overview on, are there 2 or 3 things that you recommend work better in today's technology and rushed world than they used to 10 years ago?
Absolutely. And here's a bit of good news for those of us that miss you know, face-to-face meetings on a regular basis. That and in the age of COVID, these meetings here where we can actually look each other in the eye while we speak, I think a face-to-face meeting is always going to be the highest level of advocacy that you can give, because it's not just an email, it's not just a phone call. It's someone that is there, that is a tangible human being in front of you telling you, and typically, I found a lot of good advocacy also comes along with a personal story, so that representatives and senators and any elected official can have a better idea of how it actually impacts the individual, and not in a hypothetical or statistical manner. You know, how this really impacts someone's life. That can be a huge thing. One other, I think, guiding principle, and especially when you're talking specifically about an organization with the breadth, the reach, and the geographic, I don't want to say sprawl because too often that's associated with a negative term, but really the length of the arms of the organization, if you will. An organization like the League of Women Voters has a distinct advantage over in this manner when you're talking about a state legislature. You know, obviously local politics rules, but when you're talking about a statewide legislature, you have the advantage of being able to send individuals who actually live in those areas to their individual members. You know, you can have somebody that lives in Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, Cooper City, that is a member or is a member of the community that I represent in Tallahassee. I don't care who the elected official is. If you have someone sit down in front of you and they tell you, I am a constituent and I vote, there automatically bells are going to go off. We talk a lot about the undue influence of money in politics, and it's a significant problem at every level of government. But that being the case, money in the political sense, you want that so you can communicate more effectively with voters. Well, you're cutting the middleman out. You're going there and you're saying, I am a voter in your district. I vote, and obviously it goes with even without saying, if you've taken the time to go to your elected official's office and sit down with he or she, you are someone that talks to people in your community. That goes without saying. So you know that there's other votes that may be affected. By going in there, saying that you are a constituent, automatically that representative is going to sit up a little bit straighter. They're going to pay a little bit more attention. You might find their attention not lingering on the window quite as long and looking you in the eye the entire time. I think those are two powerful ways. In person and someone that can actually vote, an actual constituent. If you're starting from that point, you're starting with a very strong foundation, no matter what it may be. And look, you may go in, I have constantly been in the favor of less restrictions on voting. I know that's something that I share with this organization and its membership and its leadership, or a belief that I share with you all. When you're talking about, there are some people that don't feel the same way as I do. When someone comes in to me and says, I am not going to, I want you to vote to hinder someone's right to vote. I can't do that. And I have to have that conversation with them. You're going to find a lot of representatives don't have the psychological wherewithal to look somebody in the eye and say, I just can't do that. And here's why. I have found that to be one of the biggest mistakes that elected officials can make. Because if you're dealing with an organization like the League of Women Voters, you're not just a one issue, one bill organization. There is going to be a list of 20 different policies or bills or amendments that we're going to discuss when anyone from the League comes in to visit me. So, when we do something like that, I will tell you, I'll be honest with you. I'll say, I can't support that, but here's why. I can't support that because that particular industry employs 75,000 people in my 150,000 district. To do that would be to kill every job in my district. I can't be responsible for that. I can have that conversation with somebody, I cannot allow you to degrade the environment to that extent because my people need living water, need water to live, period, the end, things of that nature. But you can have those conversations. But I might say no on one issue, but then on the other 19 issues, I agree with you completely. So that's something that you need to be able to have a little bit of wiggle room. I always tell people, the only politician you're ever going to agree with 100% of the time is you if you decide to run for office. I've been in the Democratic caucus I just finished my 14th session. It just came to an end and I'll be retiring from the legislature. But one thing I can tell you is that face-to-face is something that you have to have and make it be a constituent. And when you have an organization like this, you need to be able to let those constituents do that work up close and personal. We can talk about some of the other things that maybe don't work as well. But I say, if you, like I said before, if you start with that foundation, that dueling foundation of a actual constituent and eye-to-eye, face-to-face, whether it be via Zoom or in their office, I think that's always going to be the best thing. Look, the biggest trick that everybody says is when you're campaigning, you have to go knock doors and shake people's hands and look them in the eye and talk about the issues that matter to them. It's just putting the shoe on the other foot. You're going and doing that. So if I've been told for 30 years and still haven't been told anything differently, that that's the most effective way to campaign, I would have to think that that's also a pretty decent way to advocate coming back to your elected officials as well.
So one of the things we struggle with is many people have lots of different issues that they believe in and are passionate about. The League itself has been trying to focus their ask during session so that it has more impact. And one of the questions is, okay, what about members who feel passionate about some other issue? Would you suggest that they come in and talk to you about one issue at a time, or their
Um,
laundry list of issues?
Sure. No, look, I think what you said about having, kind of rendering down, this massive, if you told me, hey, you can totally rewrite Florida statutes, I'm going to come up with, and this isn't a joke, probably 10,000 changes roughly to Florida statutes. If you just let me go through with a red pen and do whatever I wanted, there's going to be tens of over 5 figures of changes and edits I would make at least as a jumping off point. But I think when you're talking about rendering all that down into 4 or 5, that allows you to be more concise. That allows you to not be a scattershot when you come in, because you do have such a large and diverse group of people that are the membership of this group in this organization. I think that you can do some very impactful work when you're talking about 4 or 5 issues. Now, I will say one thing that I have found that is effective. Margaret, let's say that you came in, that this group came in to see me in Tallahassee in the conference room, and we talked about the league's 4 or 5 things. Well, then what I found is you get through that, it's been a good meeting and everything's going well, and clearly I'm receptive to everything that you guys have been putting out. And I'm telling you, I'm looking you in the eye and I'm saying, I will vote in the way that you would like to see a representative vote on these issues. You do that, we have that meeting. There's nothing wrong with Susan or Amy who have an issue that maybe didn't bubble all the way up, but we all agree it's important. There's nothing wrong with them at the end saying, hey, and also by the way, this isn't on there, but what do you know about Indian River cleanup? Rep, what do you know about, whatever it may be, the Reedy Creek Improvement District, whatever, and we can have that conversation. And at the very least, you can walk away, Susan or Amy can walk away and say, you know what, he knows the issue. I don't have to worry about this guy moving forward. And I know that there's somebody in the legislature that sees this issue as being important and simultaneously holds my belief on these issues as well. So at least the two of you can rest assured there. So I always think that's a good idea. If let's say that one of you has something, you go into a group meeting with 3 or 4 people from the league, you go into that group meeting and you go through those key 4 or 5 points that you all have agreed on are going to be the main thrust of this particular year or session or whatever it may be. There's nothing wrong with at the end somebody going, by the way, I do think that this is also a very important thing. And look, you're going to get one of a couple reactions. I agree with you. I disagree with you. There is, look, it is a skill set in the Florida legislature to blow people off and do their absolute best not to answer a direct question that someone has given them. So there is that possibility, but there's also a 4th possibility. And this is one that I always look forward to. If it is somewhat of a niche issue, and I don't know anything about it, whenever I hear something like that, my response is, and not every legislator is going to have this response, but mine always is, I don't know anything about this at all. But here's the good news. You have the chance to be the first person to educate me on this subject. You get to lay the foundation of whatever comes next. So, I think there's nothing wrong with kind of tacking that on at the end. If something is important to you and maybe it didn't bubble up into that ultimate, what that platform is going to look like for legislature 2023. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, and oh yeah, please don't forget, save the manatee. There's nothing wrong with tacking that on there. And I think if you've had a good meeting, chances are whoever it is going to be receptive to that, no matter what it is. Or maybe you go in and you have a meeting with somebody who says, I disagree with you on all 5 of these of your main points. Well, hey, what about the, what's the name of that bird? The state bird, whatever it may be. Hey, I agree with you on that. So at least maybe try to find some common ground, because that's just me. That's me personally. Forget about advocacy. That's just me personally seeing what the country looks like right now in terms of just overall societal tension. I think it's nice when you can find somebody that disagrees with you on some stuff, but you say, but you know what, but I do disagree with them, or I do agree with them on this other thing. I think we all need to do a little bit more of that whenever we see the opportunity to. Sorry, that was preachy. My apologies.
No, that's fine. If I start sort of with the fact that other than the special session coming up on insurance, the legislature is not meeting again till March. How active is this, pre-session, or are there multiple facets within it
Sure.
where meeting, talking about issues might help?
Sure, and I'll preface that question, or my response to that question, with this. We do a dance in the legislature. We have one calendar for 1 year and one calendar for another year. And the thing that differentiates that 2 years is there an election the year before? Is there not an election the year before? So essentially the way it works is, because we'll have elections this August and November, because of that, we did our session in January and February of this year. I have been told it's so people can be home for their children's spring break. But I happen to be of the opinion I voted against it, so I can feel free to talk however I'd like about this. I believe it is so that people can start raising money as soon as humanly possible, and they don't lose those key months in the lead up to an election. But anyway, whatever the reason is, when you have a year like this year with an election in it, it's going to be January, February, and then it's going to be March, April in the years where you don't have one. So this upcoming year, it's going to be March and April. And what that really determines more than anything else, besides those 2 months of session, what that really determines is when are the committee weeks taking place, and when can you begin your advocacy at home in their own office. Because I will tell you this, if you can get into a state representative or state senator's office and you can talk to that individual prior to them going up to Tallahassee, it puts anything on their radar immediately. If they're a cognizant, qualified representative. Please understand when I say that, I know I said it at the beginning, but understand, you're going to go into some representatives, you're going to go into some Republicans' office, you're going to go into 2 of them. One's going to be amazing and fully attentive and understanding and engaging. The other is not. The same thing's going to happen when you visit Democrats. It doesn't, there are going to be some people who are just naturally more engaged with this process than other people and who dedicate more time to it. So just be aware of that and understand there is a bit of a sliding scale. There's a sliding scale with everything. Level of intelligence. I mean, look, there's some stuff I look at and I just go, I don't understand what any of this means. And I have to go seek out experts for that. But those are the times where if you have some individual expertise or knowledge on it, can really impart a lot of wisdom that goes a long way. Because if you're the first person that talks to them about issue A, the next time they talk about it, however they're talking about it, is going to be tainted in a good way. And I mean tainted like you would, or tinted. We'll go with tinted, not tainted. It is going to be tinted with in such a way that it automatically, they are going to just naturally, it's just the way the human mind works. Their knowledge base is going to be coming from you. They're going to gravitate towards that naturally, unless they just find it naturally repugnant or repulsive for some reason. But I don't think coming from the league that'll be much of a problem. But I do think that getting in there early is a good way. Now, with committee weeks, what you're going to have you're going to have everybody's going to be sworn in November. Typically, there's no legislative work associated with it. The November meeting is pomp and circumstance, nothing more, nothing less. It's a way for people to feel good about themselves and their family to have a moment to be like, you did it. And that's a great thing, but no work is being done. December, typically, you're going to have 1, maybe 2, but almost definitely 1 committee week. Then in January, you're going to have another couple more. And then typically in February, you have 3 committee weeks. So those committee weeks are a great time to get in there because the agenda is still being molded at that point in time. You can get in there and you don't have the entire lobby corps. You may have, you want to go talk to the chair of agriculture and environment about water issues. That may be the goal. Well, I can tell you, once you get to session, that chair is responsible for all the water projects in the state of Florida. every member, every lobbyist in the building is going to be coming and pressuring that man or woman into giving them the money they need or the policy they need, whatever it may be. So I always believe the earlier you can get in there and the earlier you can get commitments out of people, the better. Because look, I know there's so many politicians that talk out of both sides of their mouth morning, noon, and night, and I understand that, and it's aggravating. But there are some that if they make a commitment to somebody, they keep that commitment. And one thing I always do, and this is just from a legislative standpoint, it's not as if I'm trying to do a tap dance around anything, but I will always say, barring some huge issue that comes up out of this, that we aren't aware of today. If cleaning up waterways turns out to be the worst possible scientific thing, we all know that's not going to happen. But you just have to give your caveat unless something really wild and out of left field happens. I think that committee week is a great time to do that. Even earlier, if you have delegation meetings, get in there in those early delegation meetings before people are even coming up to Tallahassee. If you have an active delegation, you're going to have the opportunity to speak to a whole lot of people, especially if you're coming from an area like I am with Broward County. We have to have, I believe it's 12 or 13 legislators in the room just to have a quorum. So you're going to be able to mass communicate with these folks and get that stuff across. It's a good way. Look, if you're running for office, I've always made a conscious effort to try to downsize my ego. I make sure the people in my life are more than willing to pop that balloon whenever they get the opportunity to. But not everybody knows that. So you can butter some people up. Look, if you go in and you talk to Representative Representative Jane Doe, and you go in there and you have a one-on-one or a 3-on-1 meeting with her, and then you get to go to that delegation meeting a couple weeks later, and you say, I spoke to Representative A, thank you, ma'am. Spoke to Representatives B, C, and D, thank you. So for the rest of you, I know this is going to be new, but we are getting out there and scheduling these meetings with you. Let them know that you're out there and really integrated with the community and with these legislators. And then look, it'll turn into a love fest very quickly, and you'll know who's on your side. You'll know who's on your side real quick in settings like that. So I think getting with delegations as well, especially in those larger communities and larger counties, that's a great, if you're in Miami-Dade or Broward or Palm Beach, Orange, Pinellas, Hillsborough, county, Polk, even a county like Polk is getting large. County like Pasco has over 500,000 people in it. There's areas that for so long have been viewed as rural who are no longer rural in any way, shape, or form. You look at the growth in Osceola County. I see Jeff from Orlando's name pop up down there. You talk about that growth through that I-4 corridor and what were traditionally, kind of sleepy communities. That just isn't the case anymore. And they're wildly diverse, which I find just amazing. You go into some of these really communities that are really starting to blossom through that I-4 corridor, and you're seeing a very diverse community. And you need to be able to get out there and really mingle with folks. So I think the opportunity to get out there and go to a delegation meeting is always going to be a great idea, because you might actually intrigue more people to even just from a membership point of view. There may be a young woman there that is there to talk about the environment with Greenpeace, who hears you go up to the podium and talk, and that young person may come to you and say, I want to be a part of this as well. I've got time. I can do this. I can be a volunteer, and I can be a productive member of this organization. Or just to set up to go to that, whoever, the Surf Rider organization, which is a great organization. Sounds like a silly name, but it is a wonderful environmental group. You go and you meet the local president of the Surf Rider group, and you go, you know what? We have the same views on everything that you just talked about. My organization believes in the same exact thing. We should try to work together. You can build so many bonds that way, and really use that to continue to amplify your voice on some of them may be like you talk about the Surf Riders or Sierra Club. Well, those will be for your environmental things, but you may have some other things that deal with immigration, and you may meet some folks from La Raza or some of the different immigrant coalitions, and you may have the exact same viewpoints on the way they are viewing the world, and you can build powerful collaborations that way, where it's not just you. When you do put out a press release that says the League of Women Voters, which is enough in and of itself, but we talked about adding things in and really trying to create some real weight with stuff and real impact. All of a sudden, if it's the League of Women Voters, La Raza, and the Sierra Club sending out a letter, well, now all of a sudden it's like, whoa, these are very diverse organizations, traditionally with diverse policy ideals, and not really in the same silo all the time, but they're viewing this in the same exact way. They all believe that water is a necessary human right for people to live in the state of Florida. I can guarantee you all three of those organizations, I don't want to speak for the League or for La Raza or for the Sierra Club or Surf Riders, but I can guarantee you that you all agree on that. Everyone agrees.
Absolutely.
And
I think that's a way. If it is a bigger issue that people are asking for, a national popular vote or a carbon tax, or, who knows, stopping the guns or whatever, you would recommend that we make a coalition with as many groups as possible and start when the delegation starts?
It can never hurt. It can never hurt to build those relationships. And look, they may be something, you may find yourself working with Surfrider one year, the next year you look at it and there's not much there, but then you come back year 3 and 4 and it is hand in glove all of a sudden. So I just think building those relationships, whether they amount to some sort of immediate gratification in the form of a joint press release or or heck, even if it was a toy drive for your local area, why not get together? You know what I mean? Or a food drive around Thanksgiving. Why not get around? You know what I mean? You can do so much good in the community by building those. That's one thing that I have found over the course of the last decade and a half. When you add the time I spent running for office, I've either been a candidate or an elected official for the last 18 years, and a candidate that went on to win the race. So for the last 18 years, I've been doing this. So these are things that I've noticed that have really helped me as an individual, that I think really do translate really well to organizations and individuals within those organizations as well. Because look, I know how diverse the League of Women Voters interests are when it comes to policy points. It is every silo you guys are touching in. And I think that is a way you can have these individual groups that you really, and look, some of them may be one-off. You may agree completely with the League of Catholic Bishops on an issue. Well, be with them on that issue with the understanding that you may not be able to be with them on everything that they bring forward. There's a way to do that and have those relationships and have those boundaries set. Look, here's a funny, about something like that. I disagree with Americans for Prosperity on 95% of their agenda. But one thing we do agree on is giving out massive no clawback lump sum checks to corporations. I don't think that's a good way to spend taxpayer money. That's just my personal belief. They believe in that as well. We stay on that issue. When they come in to talk with me, we don't talk about anything else other than that issue. Because we know, let's put these guardrails up, because I don't want to sit here and have to yell at them about how I don't like the way the Koch brothers operate. But we can agree on this one issue. And I know that they have a lot of sway in that governor's mansion. I know that they have a lot of sway in the speaker's office. I know they have a lot. So guess what? I'm going to team up with them on this one time. It's like a comic book. You know what I mean? Every once in a while, Superman and Lex Luthor team up to save the world. And then, that's it. But it's for that one comic book. There's not going to be another comic book with that afterward. But you know that. So, you can even find friends in it's the old saying, politics makes for strange bedfellows. And it is absolutely the truth. You will find yourself agreeing with people on it. There have been some of the most absolute right-wing, right of Attila the Hun members that have approached me on individual issues and said, I agree with you 100%. Let me know you've got my vote, period, the end. I don't care what the speaker has to say. I'm voting with you. It's happened time and time and time again. So, you have to be able to embrace and then immediately release some of those type of relationships. But other ones with a pure group who, somebody who I really trust, the League, another group I really trust is Sierra Club. Like, those are groups those hugs can last a little bit longer.
Yeah, so there are non-traditional ways people are trying to make legislative changes, such as those who've tried, some successfully, for amendments to the Constitution. Do you think that's a route that groups have to think about for major issues
I
today?
do. I unfortunately I do. There's been some, if the people have been in the press and down here have asked me a couple times, or just other members have asked me, just kind of how do you see it now after so long, after nearly 2 decades? How do you see it in certain things? And could you, I'm sorry, I want to make sure I hit the question exactly, Margaret.
Yeah, I'm thinking about things like there are groups on water, on constitutional amendments. There was obviously the felons' right to vote.
I apologize.
You know, how
Sorry.
often do you think people should have to resort to those, or should they run
I
to
think
that quickly?
I think that needs to be a tool in any statewide organization's toolbox. I think it should be, I don't want to say a last resort, but definitely something, when you've exhausted other avenues. But I will say this, I think it is a necessary tool in the toolbox of any statewide organization. I realize how wildly expensive it is just to get it on the ballot. Forget about any of the PR work and the campaigning that goes on after that point. And look, the league knows this from the work they did. I believe, some of the finest work any organization has ever done in coordination with other organizations. The work that you guys did on the unconstitutional maps from a decade ago, but I will say that. But one thing I've learned is this legislature is woefully, pathetically slow to react, and on key issues that have widespread support, well over 60% support.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's something that every organization needs to think about, because there are times where, and this is odd to hear from a member of the legislature and the minority leader, there are times where the people of the state of Florida better sidestep us quickly, because there are so many people that just want to be a roadblock for whatever the reason, that sometimes it is a right and necessary thing to undertake.
Yeah, so a couple other ways that I've seen that people have tried to get the ends and not the normal means. Apparently, Agricultural Commissioner Freed has just proposed a rule to set renewable energy standards because a bunch of youth had sent her a petition. I'm wondering, do you think that we should carefully consider some of the rules as a way to make the change, even if people don't want to hear the term climate change?
Um, yeah, I think when it comes to climate change, especially given the extremely precarious nature of our geology and where we sit in relation to water, and what sea level rise and climate change means to a state like Florida. Look, there is a boulder zone deep beneath my feet right now, and water can pass back and through. Those boulders act as a filter between the salt water on one side and our aquifers on this side. It is wildly important that we take care of that. And I would say that whatever has to be done has to be done. Beyond breaking the law, I would advocate anything right up to that point, because it is such a monumental issue. If we don't have clean water, if our environment isn't in check in this state, we will have to have a mass exodus of this state. I mean, it would be catastrophic. It would be catastrophic. And I don't know. I think on issues like that, it's any legal means necessary. Any legal means necessary. And me personally, I might even turn an eye as long as nobody didn't get hurt.
Well, the other process for getting funds for things that are needed appears to be the budget process, where the Sun Sentinel, of course, reported that of all the projects this year tailored to individual lawmakers, most went to Republicans' wants. But can you tell us something about the process of getting something into the budget, let alone, seeing what happens with the governor on it?
I mean, look, it has become more politicized as I've gone through the years. Now it is It is just a web. I personally, because I was taking on the role of minority leader this year, I spent more time advocating for our members to get that done. And ultimately, as you just said, the numbers, it really didn't, that work, I'll be honest, and critical of myself, didn't really amount to very much. It has become more partisan. There have been times when I have sat down with organizations and I have specifically told them what Democrats that they need to go to if they really need this money right now, or if this is just kind of a showpiece, to show, hey, we're out here and we're doing this, but, isn't the end all be all for your organization. And I have seen the Florida House is it's odd to say it, but it's paramilitary in structure. It's very top down. It's a pyramid. And if you vote the right way, and you don't pick up your microphone and critique things, you have the opportunity to get as much in the budget as you can fill. But when you start voting against things and speaking out against things, that can hurt the amount of time you get to spend at the pork barrel trough. That is very much the reality of things. It is so much of it is done behind closed doors that it is very difficult. I can tell you that this year there was one of my fellow Democrats had a budget bill that I was a little bit, I don't like to be emotionally invested in budget bills, but I was, and I wanted to see it get done. And I very quietly walked up to the chair who was in charge of that silo, who's a friend, and said, hey, I need this money. And he said, let me look. And 5 minutes later, he said, okay, I can give it to you. I mean, that's how this works. It is not a transparent process in a lot of ways. Now, I'm happy because the COPD clinic in my community, or just a little bit north of me, is going to be fully funded for the next 2 years. So I know that there's going to be people's lives that will be better. And there's going to be, I'll never meet them and I'll never know of them. But I know that there's people will be alive one day that if that clinic wouldn't have been there, maybe they wouldn't be the next. So I have no problem telling this story, but I mean, that's how it happens. It literally was not going to get funded. We were heading into the last couple rounds of the budget negotiations. And I realized that the chair, or the appropriate chair, was a dear friend who, since they became a more powerful member, I hadn't really asked a favor of. And it was my last week of my last session. And I said, let's see what happens. And, he honored that working relationship and the amount of good we had done in the past together. And he said, if you're telling me it's good, I believe it's good, then we're going to put it in there. But sometimes it can be just that. So finding the right sponsor for those budget items is integral. It is integral, because I'm going to toot my own horn for just a second. I told you I haven't carried budget bills the last 2 sessions because I was more trying to have my hand on the rudder of a really wild ship. But because of that, but 4 years before that, I had the 6th most money drawn down of anyone in the entire Florida House, Democrat or Republican. So there are Democrats that really, and I feel bad because I could start rattling names off, but I don't want to do that and leave somebody out. But there are Democrats, if you look, that did real damage in that budget. Look, you get above, a couple $1 million, you've taken more than your share of what should be out there for you. So, we had Democrats that pushed 5, some we had one that got real close to $10 million this year. So there were Democrats that put up big numbers. So, but I will say this, that is very key, is when you have those budget requests, is going to the right individual, because not everyone has the same clout. Not everyone now, and I tell you that story about getting that budget for a COPD clinic in Fort Lauderdale, but that is 16 years worth of working in that building. The reason I was friends with that particular chair was because I was friends with the person that he replaced. And they brought him to me one day and said, meet my friend that's replacing me. That's how we became friends. So it literally, our friendship was based on a friendship that started in 2006, even though I didn't meet this guy till 2014. So it's one of these things where it was the Republican member coming, saying, hey, this is Democrat you need to be friends with, stay on his good side, he'll tear you up. And it was a joke, we clinked glasses and it was nice to meet you, man. Hopefully we can do some good work. And we were able to build on that. But so much of that budget process is, does the chair like you? Does the chair not like you? Chair doesn't like you? Good luck. Chair likes you? You never know what you can get out of that individual silo. And that's the other thing. You don't know who those chairs are going to be. And that also for your advocacy is important. Once those chairmanships and chairwomanships come out, you need to look at those and determine where you need to go. And you need, just from an advocacy point of view, from a statewide point of view, and you need to get in there. I don't know who these chairs are going to be moving forward. We know who key people will be moving forward, but we don't know who the individual chairs that'll be important for your individual policies and budget line items are going to be just yet. But that is something that everyone needs to pay attention to, because you might end up, Maria, you might end up with the chair being your state representative. You know what I mean? You never know how that's going to break down. You might, or maybe you live in a Democratic district. You might have the ranking Democrat might be your member, the highest ranking Democrat on that committee, which can be helpful as well if they have a good relationship with the chair. But yeah, so I think that's another thing. Just started to go off on a little side tangent there, but that's also something you need to, when you see those chairmanships and chairwomanships pop, you need to be able to get in there and figure out, it may be that Barbara looks at it and goes, oh my goodness, I've known this person for 15 years. Yeah, I think you know who needs to go talk to that person.
Yeah. So if I get back to advocacy for a minute, we keep thinking of advocacy as part educating people on the need and the impact, and part of it being just showing support and making sure that you see that there's a strong presence in support of it. Is there a better timing for each of the two types, or is there a point at which people think, oh, we know enough education and it's just a numbers count?
No, I think what you'll find is, I'll give somebody who's just to the south of me, Felicia Robinson, brand new member. She's going to win. She's going to be in for her second term. Felicia has worked in the education system her whole life, and that's still where she works. That's an ally there that you always want to touch base with. You build that relationship up so that you can pick up the phone and don't have to make a big production of it, because she knows that the league knows what they're talking about on these issues. And it's difficult for us because, we all have day jobs. This is a part-time job. We only get paid $28,500 a year. It's not enough to live off of. You have to have some other income stream. So we need all the help we can get. Because not everyone, I got elected when I was 27 years old. I put off having a family, getting married, all that fun stuff. I'm glad I did, because I ended up with the woman that I did end up with, but I put all that off intentionally to dedicate more time to this. Not everyone has that option. So, you need to, I think constant contact is always going to be a good idea. That way you don't have, and like I said, early contact, when you're looking at it from a seasonal point of view from year to year, I think early, that is definitely very key. But what you said is absolutely, I think you're right. I think the League of Women Voters has a reputation that allows you to walk into any room you're going into, and you are assumed to be a pillar of your community. I mean, this is the truth. This is the way my caucus views you. I know that for a fact. You are viewed as a pillar.
But we as individuals have all the various league opinions, and some of the people here are saying, okay, so the league doesn't prioritize national popular vote or getting rid of guns, but we want to talk to our legislatures about whatever the issue is that particular person is in charge of.
Yeah, I would encourage that individual to do so. I would encourage it. It makes our job easier when we know what people are thinking out there. We have the most descriptive job title of anything. I don't care what industry you're talking about. Representative, it is right there. I mean, maybe a catcher in baseball, That's about the only job title more descriptive than representative is catcher or pitcher.
Okay, and if the person can't meet with you face to face, you like emails or
I
phone
always
calls?
phone calls always work really well, but remember what I said at the onset of this meeting, different representatives are always going to have different styles. Some are going to love, just want to talk on the phone all day. Others are going to want to have, like myself, I like to have a nice structured couple days during the week where I go into that office at 10 a.m. The first meeting comes in, and we talk for an hour. The next person comes in, then I take my staff out to eat lunch. Then the next person comes in for an hour, and we just go through that where I get that time. But different people, like I said, are going to have different wants and needs and schedules. We have members that are criminal defense attorneys who could be called away at the drop of a hat. So you have to be cognizant of people's schedules and what they like to do. But sometimes it doesn't hurt. The LA is a key position in any office, the legislative aide. Sometimes giving them a call and saying, hey, we would love to talk with Representative Gottlieb. We would love to sit down with Representative Michael Gottlieb right here in Broward County. We'd love to talk to you. What's the best way for us? We love to come in and speak face to face, but what's the best way? What would the representative prefer? How we do that? That's always a good way too. Personally, myself, and I know there are other reps that do that. Whenever we get a call, I always say, how would you like to speak with me? Would you like to come in? Would you like to Zoom? Would you like to talk on the telephone? And what time? But I don't know. I've always prided myself on that, and not everyone does. But yeah, I would say given that LA the call when you make that contact to set up the meeting and say, what does the representative prefer? We would love to come in and talk face to face. Or but if they're not available for that, what can we do to do that?
So if somebody wants to talk to a legislator who is not theirs, do you recommend they find a friend and bring them along as a constituent, or how is it likely to be perceived?
I think they'll always still take the meeting, because like I said before, every person that's elected at least has a little bit of an ego in there. There's at least a little bit of an ego. So for years, I didn't know. I'm retiring from politics and from the legislature, but for years, I didn't know that. So if somebody from Broward County came into my office, it was roll out the red carpet, because I didn't know. So because I wanted to treat the whole county like my constituency. That's the way it always went for me. It went my constituents, then Broward County, and then we go then everybody else essentially. But that's because I represent solely Broward County, but I think that it's something that even if you are not a constituent, going in there, it doesn't matter. Most people are. If you took the time to come in, I've never sat down and said, so Margaret, what's your address, so I can type that in real quickly and see if you're my constituent or not. No. We got a call. Someone would like to come in. They'd like to talk about these issues. Come on in. You may tell me during the course of that meeting, oh, hey, I live right off of Sheridan Street, right there by 441. Okay, cool. All right, you're my constituent then. That's good to know. But yeah, no, I think if anybody takes the time to come in, I always take the time to do that. There's a young guy that works with the Florida A&M, the Florida A&M Alumni Association. He comes in to see me every single year. I am up to date on exactly everything that Florida A&M needs from me to make them be as successful as possible. So he comes in every year and he lets me know that he's not my constituent. He's not. He lives down in Miami, but he still comes up to Broward and he still hits everybody's office before we get up for session and committee weeks. He does that because he believes in the institution. He's an alumni. He believes that and I happen to agree with him, but he believes these things, and he comes in and he makes sure that every person in those two delegations, by the time they go up there, they know what the Florida A&M Alumni Association wants to see come out of Tallahassee in terms of budget and policy. So yeah, no. And I look forward to having those meetings, and I have a relationship with him now that when he calls up, my staff knows. We don't even need, okay, we're doing meetings on Tuesday and Thursdays next week. we know, okay, sir, what day works best for you? We can do you next week. And he comes in, and so, yeah, no, I always think that that's helpful, because what's going to happen is I've grown to trust him on issues regarding Florida agriculture and machinery university. I've come to trust him
Yeah.
on these issues. People will come to trust you on these issues if you tell them the truth, and you even if you don't live in that particular geographic line, within those geographic lines.
So we're coming near the end of of our time.
Okay.
My last question, and then we've got a couple in the chat that I think we'd like to talk about,
Sure.
is what do you do on issues where you get flooded by, 10 groups have suggested, here's a sample email? How does that all work?
We very quickly, I think anyone will recognize the pattern that, hey, wait, the last dozen emails I read had the same subject and the same thing. What we typically do is, once we notice that that's coming in, what we try to do is, are they coming from my district? Because if 1,000 of these are coming from my district, then this is something very serious that's going on, and my district is very engaged on this. So I, even if I am completely unfamiliar with it, must now become immediately engaged in it. So it can have that effect. If all of a sudden I haven't heard about a complaint about the dump at 441 and 595, if I haven't heard any complaints about that, then all of a sudden there's 500 emails that come in that say, we're the homeowners around here, we're the renters around here, and we're done putting up with this. If all of a sudden I know I have to get engaged, and it needs to be immediate. It's immediate engagement at that point. So I think they do have some sort of value. The other thing is, we do now, I said, okay, we know that they are or are not coming from the district or not. But the other thing we do is, if we keep track, if the National Rifle Association does this and I get 3,000 emails, only 20 of them are from my district, I am going to know that my district is not incensed or worked up about this, at least with this particular point of view. But there are large swaths of people throughout the state that are very concerned about this issue. So I am going to monitor it. But when I know that that's coming from the community that has given me the honor to represent them, I'm going to immediately engage. My staff knows to immediately engage. Say that happens, and all of a sudden I get 500 things saying, you got to do something about this dump or Fort Lauderdale International Airport. If that happens all of a sudden, I know I immediately have to jump in. My staff knows that. So before I even find out about it, I will have a dossier ready for me to go when something like that happens, or at least a one-pager that says the dump's been burning at times they shouldn't be burning. It's coating people's houses in ash. Okay, I know exactly what's going on now. So now I'm going to call the company that runs that dump, and I'm going to say, what are you doing? Regulation. I'm going to check statute. I'm going to see everything we can do. So that's going to force me to engage immediately. So if you can get a lot of constituents in there, but like I said, even if 10,000 emails, only 20 of them come from District 99, I'm still going to be engaged on that, because it's an issue that people care about. And I know that somebody is going to ask me about it at some point in time. So I need to be educated on the issue.
Okay, so we've got a couple of comments here. Several ask about how you follow up after a meeting. Do you do a big leave behind, a short and concise leave behind?
I personally like a good, 1 or 2 pager. You know what I mean? That really breaks it down and tries to render it down as much as you possibly can. Because like I said, there's 120 different people, and we all come from different backgrounds. Everybody's going to be a little more attracted to a different type of policy than others. I went hog wild on fracking. I know more. To this day, I will put money on it. I know more about fracking than any member in the history of the Florida legislature has ever known. I just found it so fascinating and it's so complicated, and I dove into it. So I think that you can, if you can render those things down, because you're going to engage. And if I don't know something about it, I'm going to, and I want to know more, I'm going to do that. But if you can be as plain spoken as possible and clear and concise. I think that's always going to be something. And then you can say to them, if they say, what, talk to me more about this water quality issue in the water table. And you can go, oh, I can send you a larger download on this if you'd like, or maybe your staff would like to read through it, because that's another thing you're going to find too. I don't want to say the majority, but there are quite a few representatives who don't read the bills, don't read the analysis. It's their staff that does it. So you can engage with those staffers and get the same down. It's all ended up in the same, as my Uncle Spence used to tell me, because I couldn't understand why he would mix all his breakfast together into one giant plate of mush. It's all going to the same place anyway. And it's the same thing, even though you're giving it to that LA, that's probably who you might want to have it. But look, then there's other people like Fentress Driscoll from Tampa, who is one of the most brilliant human beings I've ever met in my life, and she'll be able to digest whatever you've got. You've got women like Anna Escamani or Tracy Davis up in Jacksonville that can do the same, and you have people that can do that can really digest very complex things. But I think as an overall, I think it's good to say, oh, are you interested? Would you like more? We have a deeper dive into this. That might not be a bad thing. But I think sometimes when you come in there with just, a 300-page textbook, very, very, very rarely are those going to be read cover to cover. So I think if you can give something that's digestible and gets the point across in a clear, concise way, but then again, that is my overall belief in communication as a whole, as I've rambled on now for an hour and 5 minutes. But I normally believe that concise is the way to go.
Yeah, well, we've had some more questions, but I guess the last one comes from several people, whether you're grooming or endorsing the next person for your seat, or have any comments on the next people.
Absolutely. I have, it really has been a pleasure. You have to understand, my father was in the legislature. It was my childhood dream to be a member of the Florida legislature. What a horrible childhood dream, but it was mine. And I managed to live it out very early. I was elected at 27 years old. I'm 44 now. But I've been able to, really live out my childhood dream. And because of that, I have had more say than anyone in this district about who represented them. I have had an outsized effect on that because I was here for 6 years. They did redistricting and I got gerrymandered out. I sat out for 2 years and came back for another 8. I have had more of a say who was here than anyone has the right to do so. There are 3 candidates that I know of at this point running to replace me. I say that about having an oversized say in who represented this area for so long as a very long-winded way to tell you I'm not endorsing anybody. I'm not going to endorse anybody. I think that everybody should have a clear chance. I was given that clear chance without my predecessor endorsing anybody. I was given that to just see who wins. I can tell you that the 3 people, I know all 3 of the people. I think they would all be capable. I think they would all be extremely different in their approach to how to legislate. Not so much in the way that they vote. I think that you'll find a lot of agreement once they start campaigning. I think you'll see a lot of agreement across the board on a lot of issues. But I think they all are very different in who they are, their personalities, their backgrounds. A nice group of people. I happen to like all 3 of them. I think all 3 are fit for office, are fit for this particular office as well. And they all bring their own backgrounds. You have an attorney that really understands insurance and legal and justice matters very well. You have somebody that has been a lifelong advocate and community organizer who has also worked for some of the most impressive politicians, local politicians that I know for, who really understands the mechanics of how everything works in government. So that's a different skill set. And then you have an environmental advocate who is very, very extremely well versed on all the different aspects of the environment. So you really are going to be presented, if you live in District 99, instead of looking at this mug like you have for the last 2 decades, you're really going to be presented with a pretty interesting choice. And I'm looking forward to seeing who comes out on top. And I think that, like I said, I think all 3. There may be more people that have got in. I say that I have been in the process of disentangling myself from politics a little bit here. I have not gone back to check to see who else is running. How dare they not call me ahead of time to tell me that they don't care. It's not my seat. People were kind enough to rent it, let me lease it for longer than the Constitution even allows. So I've had my run, and I appreciate that. I've been able to do some good things. I've drawn down a lot of money, and I'm happy with what I've been able to do over the period of time. So I'd like the community to decide without me trying to put my thumb on a scale, and doing that. I was given that when I first ran, and I think the 3 of them deserve that, because even though I may think that I wouldn't tell you, but even if I did think that one was more deserving than the other, I wouldn't want to do that to those other 2 people. I would be slighting 2 other people who I believe are qualified. And most importantly, and this is one thing, and I should have led with this, all 3 of them, even though they're different people, different backgrounds, different professions, all of them, all 3 of them have their heart in the right place and want to make their community better, and they want to make their state better. And after that, I can't really ask for too much out of a state representative, because like I said, the only politician you'll ever agree with 100% is if you decide to run yourself. And even then you might find yourself disagreeing every once in a while.
Well, I thank you very much for sharing your time and your insights with us. We wish you all the best as your future takes you wherever you want to go.
Thank you.
And I also thank everyone who's attended this, because after all, a participatory democracy needs engaged citizens.
Oh, Margaret,
Yep.
Can I add one last thing? I know you said there were a couple other questions in the chat. If somebody can compile them and send them to Christina Pickens in my office, I'll respond via email if there were other questions, and we can make sure, at the very least, if you put something down there we didn't get to it, know that, give me, and I will ask, and normally I would say you'll get it tomorrow. My LA had a root canal today. Ooh. So I would ask just for a couple days of lenience, but I promise you will have it in your email box by the end of the week.
Thank you very much again.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Good evening, everyone.